Ladies and gentlemen, we find Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times as we give you another edition of Inside Pitch, brought to you by Chalet Bowl in the nation's and the world's greatest airport. According to Divish, that would be SeaTac Airport. As he is waiting, as he's traveled back from Orlando, covering the winter meetings for you, Mariner fans, and for the Seattle Times and Puck Sports. He's waiting for a connecting flight to Great Falls, Montana, which he will then drive. I don't know. How long is it from Great Falls to Havre, Montana?
110 miles.
110 miles. Boy, it's a venture to get back to Havre, Montana. But here he is. He's ready to go. He's excited from the airport. Nothing like people around you hearing you scream about the Mariners here for the next few minutes. How were the winter meetings?
They were an assault on my liver, as I told you earlier. Because that's what a lot of it, like, that's, how you get a lot of your sources, like your insider information is at night. You're in the bar, the hotel bar. It's just this huge area. There's people everywhere. You're just having conversations, whether it's scouts or front office people or, that kind of stuff. I mean, so the national guys like Heyman and Rosenthal, Passan on some level, Robert Murray, they all kind of stalk the hallways, walking around, trying to pick off, like, if they see an agent or they see one of the agent's top guys, or, they see somebody from an organization, they'll try and pick them off, have some conversation, get some information. I don't do that. I'm not going to sit there and like hawk people in the hallways. I mean, if I run into them naturally, you just get up and walk around, take a lap, because you're in this big ass conference room that is so just like, one, it's freezing cold in there too. And it's just a bunch of middle-aged white dudes in there making bad sounds and eating bad food. So you kind of get up and walk around. But, yeah, I mean, like, usually it's when you're at night and like everybody's done with the meetings for the day or whatever, and you run into some people, whether it's from the Mariners or other teams, you start BSing, and then they start telling you stuff like, hey, here's what we're doing. And that's always kind of how it works.
All right, so what I think that the most pressing thing, at least from a Mariners perspective, is Jorge Polanco. Where are we at? It seems like what you and Adam wrote at the Seattle Times, and again, seattletimes.com, Mariners would prefer a 2-year deal, maybe with an option of a third year, but 2 years is kind of where they're at. And then the agent for Polanco is pushing for 4 years. You guys had talked about or had written about a little bit. I think there was an ESPN report saying, hey, Polanco wants to get a deal done this week. Still, of course, a few days left here in this week. How far are they apart? And should Mariner fans start preparing for themselves of not having Polanco on the roster next year?
I think it's kind of just like the Polanco and his agent, Ulysses Cabrera, who's also Julio's agent. And I think he has one other guy on the team. They know where the Mariners are at. I don't think the Mariners are going to give in on the third year. They might put a vesting option similar to this year that's easily attainable for, that we give in the third year, but they're not. I don't think they're going to cave and give in. The thing is like, and then the Pirates, from what I've heard, is the Pirates are willing to give them that third year, maybe even the fourth year. So that's, it's a bigger amount of money overall. And to me, I guess it basically just comes down to, does Polanco want to go somewhere new again to a team that isn't going to win, has no chance of winning, for more money? Or does he want to take a 2-year deal here and have a chance to win in a place that he's very comfortable with, that he likes? And then, in 2 years, you can still go out and get another 2-year deal if you really look at it. I mean, like, there are opportunities for him to get paid and still play without having to get a team to commit to 4 years. But I think that's just the biggest sticking point. It's more about where Polanco wants to go. I do think that it's weird though, like, the Mets are having not a great winter meetings. You lose Edwin Diaz and then you don't get Pete Alonso. And Schwarber's off the board. They had interest in Schwarber. And so all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe do they try and piece it together by adding more pieces like Polanco, or do the Red Sox do that? Red Sox kind of like Eugenio Suarez, like their base. Like, do they do that? I mean, there's some other options. Maybe does the movement today open up other teams to jump in on Polanco that might not have been interested a week ago?
And right now, as we stand here, as we record this on a Wednesday, from the Seattle SeaTac Airport, again, greatest airport of all time.
Yeah.
The Pirates appear to be the team that have been the most aggressive with Polanco.
Well, the Mariners have been the most aggressive in the sense that they contacted him. I think even when the season got over with, made it clear they wanted to bring him back. They were willing to bring him back. They had a role for him, kind of pushed, hey, let's run this back again, this group. And so I think they were kind of the first to make the offer. And then if you notice, like the Pirates have jumped in on a bunch of these guys offering money all of a sudden, trying to make themselves relevant. And Polanco's one of those guys. So I think the Mariners have probably been the most firm. They've been there the earliest, but they're not, I don't know that they're going to get into a bidding war for Jorge Polanco and give him $50 million. I don't see that happening. I can see them and we talked about it the last time. I can see them going, if Polanco wants if they can get Polanco to go to 2 years, they might go $15 million a year for 2 years, raise the average annual value a little bit instead of, more money over time. They're not going to they're just not going to commit that much to it.
Okay, so let's say Polanco signs elsewhere. He gets his 3-year or 4-year deal, and he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they turn their attention now? Because there are really no free agents on the market for that spot. Or depending what he's going to be, second baseman, DH. I guess they still could go the free agent route if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's drying up. What about then where do you turn your attention to the trade front?
They would probably go. I know they're even if they get Polanco, they're still very in on Brendan Donovan of the St. Louis Cardinals. He's versatile. He can play multiple positions, and he's only going to cost about $5 million in arbitration. So they're very in on that. The problem has been Chaim Bloom, who's taken over the Cardinals, is trying to restructure his scouting staff, his pro scouting staff, putting in their algorithms and metrics they want to use to evaluate players. So they're trying to right now evaluate the Mariners farm system with a new scouting group. And, I think there's about 15 teams that are probably interested in getting Donovan because he's cheap and because he's versatile, pretty productive. So, the Mariners have been very persistent in calls with St. Louis, but St. Louis is just say, hey, look, we got to vet this stuff. So maybe, a week or two down the road before they really make a decision on what they want to do with Donovan and who they want to engage with.
Okay, so the Donovan route, I think, did you mention Lau in there at all? Yeah, you mentioned him. If they go into the season right now, do you think they're comfortable going into the season with Cole Young at second base?
Yeah, they would. I think they're just looking for a hitter of any sort, especially when they just use Marte DH, or if they have to, maybe it's just a corner infielder instead, and they do it that way. I don't know though, that they're going to have to do something different. Brandon Lau would fit them. I've always thought that he was a fit, but he's going to cost money and prospects as well. I think he's only got 1 year left, but he is a fit. So, they'll have to give up something to get him. But yeah, obviously there's the whole Ketel Marte thing hanging out there, and talking with people, it does sound like they won't move him unless they get a major league pitcher. And so,
so Arizona, the contingency for them is a starting pitcher coming back to them.
Plus prospects, they're asking
plus
for
prospects.
Yeah. So my guess is it'd be for them to make that work, the Mariners are giving up Bryce Miller, Cole Young, and then probably one other prospect, if not two, to get Ketel. Because you're getting them for 4 or 5 years.
Well, just to follow up on that, because as you and Adam Jude wrote at the Seattle Times, get a hard copy, by the way. I enjoy a hard copy. You can ruffle it around and still to this day can never get a proper fold on a hard copy. And it's always maddening. Or you can get a subscription online, seattletimes.com. But as you guys wrote about, hey, they appear to be out on Ketel Marte. Are they more out because Arizona's asking too much, or are they just out on Marte? They've pivoted. Do you think they've pivoted off of of him right now, and that is not an option moving forward.
I don't think they could completely pivot it off of him, but I think they have limitations on where they'll go because you're giving up. You're giving up a lot of prospect capital and taking on a lot of money, and it's money that, you take on a contract with, let's go, what, $100 million left. Now that's a John Stanton decision as much as it is a Jerry DePoter decision. So,
right.
Yeah, they're going to have to, and again, like, they know Marte, and they had to, they felt like he was and he was at the time. I mean, they felt like he was a little immature and a little stubborn when he was with the organization, and, they weren't weren't afraid to move on from him. And I mean, like, you read the stories about some of the issues he's had and everything like that this year, and just kind of how he is. Because he's not, like, in talking with people, he's not like a leader type. He's not the hardest worker in the room. He works, but he does what he's supposed to, and he's never been that kind of guy to set an example, despite being one of their best players. So I don't know. I mean, like, the Mariners clubhouse culture is pretty strong. And I mean, honestly, like, if the Mariners are going to go down that road with Marte, they have the perfect person they can call in Josh Naylor to get a read on what he saw, because he was there for a little bit. So
yeah.
I just think
it's very different than when he was first here.
Yeah, I think it's just different in the sense that, like, I just think the prospects that you'd have to give up, and the money you're going to have to take on. And for a guy that is 34, he's a year younger than Polanco, and isn't really a second baseman after about, you can play him there, but he's not a very good second baseman.
And that comes with, I think you touched on the maturity issues. Again, the house being broken into and all that. But again, he admitted that this planned vacation when he was gone for the team was planned before that, and it had nothing to do with it. It just brings up a lot of red flags there with Ketel Marte. All right, the Harry Ford trade. How much did that catch you off guard? And listen, we viewed him as one of these top prospects in this organization, and I think just on the surface, when I had probably the reaction that many Mariner fans had when the compensation came back, and you're like, that's who they're getting, a bullpen arm for a guy that I think a lot of Mariner fans viewed as a very big chip in this organization. It probably just speaks to how the rest of the league views Harry Ford.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think, and I've talked about it on here before. Harry is like, you look at him and you see the strength, and, he's built like a brick shithouse. I mean, he's just thick and strong, and he runs well for a catcher, and he's got a strong throwing arm, and he moves well, but those things don't translate well into the games. Like, he doesn't always play very athletic. Taylor Trammell didn't play athletic despite being really athletic. There's guys, Jason Puckett doesn't play really athletic despite being athletic, like having an athletic look to him. Trying to think of what else. We were going through it the other night. And that's the thing is, so, like, here's this great athlete that moves well, that's strong, got a big arm, but he's not a great receiver. He doesn't, he's not elite at blocking. He's not elite at receiving, game calling, obviously that's something that grows with experience. And then, like, I think he wasn't even, in terms of catchers in the organization behind Cal Raleigh, that Luke Stevenson kid they drafted this year out of North Carolina was much more advanced defensively than Harry Ford. And I think, like, had Harry's value been higher, he would have been traded a while ago. They were willing to include him in any number of deals, even when his value is probably even higher than it is right now. And, and then also, like you saw at the end of the year, they didn't trust him enough to catch him in games.
Yep. All right, where do they go now? Yeah, I think it was Jude who said, hey, listen, both of you saying they are open to bringing Mitch Garver back. The likelihood that Garver is once again backing up Cal Raleigh this year.
Maybe 60 or 70%. I mean, like, it's just because they know who he is. It's going to come down to a dollar amount. I put in I put in the paper today like that Austin Hedges got 1 year at $4 million and James McCann got 2.75 million. I mean, I'm guessing like if you give Garver, 3 million or 2.5 million, 3 million for 1 year, he probably does it. I don't know if there's a ton of opportunities for him out there to get multi-age deal. And I'm like, you look around, because like somebody like Danny Jansen, who's a little bit better offensively, um, he's not going to come to Seattle unless they can kind of guarantee him fight appearances as the DH or whatever. Because like, these guys want to play still, not everybody's happy being, a backup QB or a backup catcher that never gets to play. And with the way they play Cal, and that's part of the reason why they didn't hold on to Harry. Like he was never going to really improve at the major league level because he was never going to play enough to get better at the major league level. So why keep him around? You're doing a disservice to him. I think that's the same thing. So like who they get, at least like with Garver, he understands his role. He understands the pitchers they trust in. There are probably opportunities for him and Cal to play. He may get some DH days against the lefty, but I think that familiarity matters. You look at the rest of the market, it isn't great. They'll probably sign another one of these guys to a minor league deal with an option or an invite to spring training as insurance. But yeah, I mean, somebody like that is probably who they're going to go get. I mean, you look at the remaining catchers, they're all over 35, and there's a reason why they're free agents and they're backup types because that's what their profiles aren't great.
And you guys have at least have received the impression here in this offseason at the winter meetings in Orlando. We had talked about Luis Castillo being maybe an option that they would look at moving on from, but you're not getting that sense that they're willing to move on from Castillo at this point.
No, because I don't think that they would really, his value to them probably is greater than his value to another team. Now it could change because the starting pitching market gets kind of weird, but, I was talking with Passon last night and he was like, well, because we were talking about the Marte trade. And I said, well, they're probably going to ask for Kirby. He goes, well, just trade him. You don't think he's going to resign. And so trade him and believe that Logan Evans or Jarangelo Cincha is good enough to help you, Emerson Hancock, or you go out. There's a lot of number 5 starter types on the market that you could go get for a 1-year deal and do it that way. And that is, the Mariners are going to face some tough questions with some tough decisions with George and with Logan coming up. And, can't really trade Logan. That's Cal's best friend and he's been your pitching guy. And I think George, I don't think they'd want to do it. That's why I said, I just don't think that the Marte thing fits if they got to give up one of their rotation guys, because they're not like the prospects like Cincha, Ryan Sloan, Cade Anderson. They're a ways away. Cade, especially, because like that kid has never really pitched more than about 65 or 70 innings in a summer. The eyes don't see that. I think it's fair to that kid to expect him to come in and help. DePoto mentioned that Sloan could probably debut this year just because he's that talented, but it's just hard. Like it's a huge jump from the AAA to the big leagues to find success.
All right. So at this moment, on the horizon, you expect something more, but if we expect something more from this organization, we feel that it will be via trade, right? As we just wrap this up.
Yeah. Look, they have a little bit of money that they sign a right-handed reliever that's got some experience and leverage, just to depth to that, make it a little bit deeper. You look at their bullpen now, Munoz, Farrar, Rash, Spire, Izardo, that's a pretty good group, and then if your back end or your lower level guys like Carlos Vargas and some of those guys, Jackson Coar, or if you add one more to that, it just gives you a little bit that much more depth. I think that's a pretty good thing to do, and they're going to try and do that. They've talked to several right-handed relievers. I think now that Diaz and a couple of these guys have seen that'll move it quicker. But yeah, and then like the bat, they've got to add a bat, and if it's not Polanco and whatever, then they're going to have to get creative. And maybe it's a guy that you look at as more of a full-time DH or something, or maybe it is a trade. That's the one thing too, is like there are some guys out there, like you look at the Red Sox, even the Blue Jays have some roster congestion. Maybe you pick up a guy that you profile as a DH on a bounce back candidate, do it that way. These guys will always be a little bit more creative than we are because we just kind of look at the simple. Although, like for them, this season, the most obvious moves at the deadline they made, and they were the best moves we could possibly make. I just don't know. It's as simple as that right now out there. Do I think they're going to go out and get Cody Bellinger or somebody like that? No, how they're. I don't know. I could try to project where their money's at right now. I mean, if they sign Polanco or add this reliever, they're pretty much done. Where their budget is and how much they want to allot to have some flexibility at the deadline. I just don't see it, and like Bellinger's not going to want to come here anyway. So it'll be interesting to see where they go and what they have to do if they have to pivot on from Polanco. I think for, the first month of the offseason, I think they really felt confident that they were going to get both Naylor and Polanco done. And it was going to be a very simple offseason. But if Polanco pivots and goes to the Pirates or maybe some other team jumps in, then it could get a little bit more, they may have to be a little more creative. And that's when the trade route comes in, because maybe you can't just get one guy to fill that production, but you're getting two guys. So then that's how you have to do is by trade.
You are the best. Safe travels back to Havre, Montana, and negative whatever 20 it is, 30, 40, and all that.
Well, it's not exactly great weather here, but
it's terrible weather right now. Great work down there in Orlando. You and Adam Jude get all and catch all of their work. Seattle Times, SeattleTimes.com.
I'm flying back for signing days. The stepkids are signing for their schools.
That's right, and good for you. And congratulations to them both.
Yeah. One of them is going to that school. I don't know her name, but I'll be happy. Brent Fegan for Cougs coach. Brent Fegan. Let's go.
Okay, we got it. Thanks, Divish.
See you.